I genuinely didn't think that Starfield needed land vehicles, but after a few hours of driving around in my janky Bethesda space buggy, I am willing to admit that I was very wrong, because I don't know how I ever got by without it. The Rev 8 land vehicle isn't perfect, but it is a ton of fun to use, and it makes a much bigger difference to the gameplay loop than I ever thought it could. It's not the only thing that Bethesda added with this update, and I'll get to the what else later, but first I have to talk about this jetpack boosting space roving roadster. Though I realise that spacewalking across an empty planet's surface is not especially fun for most players, I previously defended the lack of vehicles in Starfield, chiefly because I felt that it was an aspect of the game which could largely be avoided across the length of a full playthrough. And also because generally I couldn't see land vehicles substantially improving the on-planet experience, when the problem that most people had was that there was little to do or see on these procedurally generated planets. I stand by that point too, because the Rev 8 doesn't fundamentally change the way that these planet surfaces are generated. But I actually think that this vehicle might be fun enough in practice that the problem of relatively unexciting locations to explore is at least partially negated. The Rev 8 Space Rover changes the way it feels to play Starfield, maybe most of all simply due to the variety it adds to gameplay. Boost packs and the general traversal mechanics in Starfield have always felt really great to me in combat and in settlements, but because they're not by default optimized for crossing vast distances, these mechanics grow tiresome when traveling a long way. But transitioning from flying your ship in outer space to driving these vehicles on planet surfaces and then to boosting around settlements breaks up the gameplay fantastically well.
Falling back!
Acquiring one of Starfield's newfangled space buggies is actually pretty simple in-game. It's just a matter of buying the Rev 8 for 25,000 credits from any ship services technician. Then, from that point on, this little buggy will appear outside your ship, seemingly wherever it's parked. It's definitely not prevented from spawning in the major cities at least, because I actually had some of the most fun with this new vehicle just flying around New Atlantis and Aquila City. I even tried parking the Rev 8 on top of the Gnat to bring it with me around the city, but unfortunately it didn't quite make it. To be honest, I think I would have preferred if this vehicle was made available by adding a small garage module to your ship, out of which it would emerge when you land on a planet, rather than it just appearing out of nowhere. I'd just like for it to feel a little bit more immersive, but this solution does work fine gameplay wise. It gets you into your little buggy as quickly as possible after you've left your ship, and that's probably a good thing. As you hop into your buggy, your companion will get in alongside you, or Vasco will hop in the back. And at least in testing with Andrasia, they have several new voice lines to comment on various driving things as you're driving along, which is nice. And, as I said before, driving this thing is seriously fun. Absolutely key to that fun, I think, is being able to boost jump upwards as well as boosting forward, because traversing the bumpy terrain of planets would be a much more arduous task without that ability. And it makes bouncing around Starfield's major settlements a lot of fun too. Though I am by no means an expert on vehicles in games, driving the Rev 8 generally felt great to me, and it definitely put me in mind of the Mako from Mass Effect, especially on the lower gravity planets. It's simple and intuitive to use, and it feels optimized for fun over realism. As someone who hasn't spent a great deal of time exploring barren planets in Starfield, this vehicle definitely makes me want to do a whole lot more exploring, if only for the fun of driving around by itself. Even just in my brief time testing, Cruising along the surface of Earth's moon in my Rev 8, I visited several landmarks in what felt like no time at all, and I even came across a new-to-me random encounter with a survivalist scrounging at the scene of a small battle. It definitely takes the tedium out of this kind of exploration when you can reach things in the distance so much quicker. And finding a boring building with little to no loot is a lot less disappointing when you haven't spent 10 minutes spacewalking towards it. Oh, and the laser cannon on top of this thing is also brilliant, by the way. It feels relatively well scaled, but just being able to drive and fly around a target as you zap them makes it extremely overpowered in a very good and fun way. The Ashtar around Aquila City are no match for this thing. If you never liked the procedurally generated planets, locations, and encounters in Starfield, then this vehicle is unlikely to win you over. But honestly, it might, because it just makes the whole traversal experience so much more fun. I think the problem with spacewalking and boost packing across a planet's surface normally is that the planet's surface itself provides little to no obstacle to the player's movement. You just keep jumping and boost packing forward and you get where you want to go. But using the Rev 8, you really have to traverse the landscape carefully and time your boosts just right to build up momentum. It effectively makes moving from point A to point B a properly gamified experience. Generally speaking, I'm more impressed with how using this vehicle feels in-game than I ever thought I would be. But it does still have issues. Unsurprisingly, the game's performance is going to take a serious hit at times when driving around in the Rev 8. I encountered some pretty severe issues in my testing, especially around Aquila City, but I didn't have any game-breaking issues that stopped me from having fun with it. Of course, the nature of these things is such that some people are going to have far worse issues than me. And I understand that people are already reporting a variety of new and exciting game-breaking bugs as a result of this update. It's fair to say that this land vehicle has been implemented in a very Bethesda way, with all the problems that come along with that. Aside from bugs and performance issues though, I'll say as well that I wish there was a way that I could increase the amount of boosting I can do, or adjust some of the handling. It feels like vehicle buffs are something that should have been retroactively added to one or a few of the skills in the game's skill tree, but I figure it's something they'll probably keep finessing in the future. It's obvious from the way they've set it up here that they're almost certainly planning on adding more vehicles in the future, which will presumably handle in a similar way but with slight variations in aesthetic and armaments. I wouldn't be surprised to see them add some proper customization options beyond just changing the colour too. You access the vehicle in a similar way to your ships, so it seems like it's set up to be able to offer a lot more depth if they feel like adding it in the future. It would not surprise me at all though if they added new vehicles and new customization options, not in the form of a free update or a DLC expansion, but in the Creations shop as paid Bethesda-made mods. Because while I'm thankful that we got the Rev 8 in a free update, I'm increasingly confused and worried about Bethesda's contributions to Creations.
Deploying Neural Disruptor. Spooling grav drive. Please remain still while the procedure initiates. Welcome to Project Mammon. We apologize for any inconvenience you experienced in your transport.
Flying under the radar somewhat, alongside the addition of the Rev 8, a new batch of Bethesda-made creations was also added to the Creations shop. There's new weapon skins, new plushies, and a new quest called Escape, which costs 500 creation credits. I was intrigued enough by this one that I bought it and tried it out, and I have to say it's actually an incredibly fun mini expansion for the game. I won't spoil too much for those who want to buy this one, but the whole mission is basically a mystery-filled perilous escape room, where you are forced to solve a variety of puzzles, working together with 2 other characters in order to progress all the way to the end. They're not especially tricky puzzles, but they are fun and diverse and a nice change of pace for the game. And there are generally a couple of different ways to solve each and move on to the next room in the space station, as well as some tough choices for the player to make. And at the end you get a special variant of the Regulator Blade Runner knockoff gun, which is a nice bonus. It will only take you an hour or 2 to finish the story, but it's honestly up there with some of the best quests in the game in my opinion. And that actually kind of sucks, because I still feel like it costs too much for what's on offer. It definitely feels like a better value than the Trackers Alliance quest, and for only 100 credits more than this single outfit, it looks like an absolute bargain. So it probably is one of the best value creations that you can buy. But the more I think about it, I just can't feel good about buying quests piecemeal like this, or as part of creations, especially if they're going to continue going down this path. Since it debuted, I have periodically browsed the Creations store, tested out several mods, and reflected on the model that Bethesda is putting forward here. And I'm increasingly uncertain about its long-term prospects. I don't think the value offered by paid creations are especially great across the board, and I generally don't think it's made very obvious what you're paying for either. Aside from that though, I've realised that the thing that specifically makes me uncomfortable about creations is the integration of the Bethesda made content. It goes without saying that Bethesda offer some of the most egregiously priced mods here, but I'm willing to concede that the surcharge is at least somewhat justified, given that these are necessarily going to be some of the highest quality mods available, and have the added bonus of not affecting your ability to earn achievements. And if this were a live service MMO, I could see the pricing model here making some kind of sense. It would still be absurd and a ripoff, but at least it would balance in my head with what I know other games are charging elsewhere for similar content. This is a purely single player game though, at least for the foreseeable future. And in that context, and given prior expectations for this kind of game, the whole marketplace feels unbalanced. When the game's first major expansion, Shattered Space, releases on the 30th of September, I am assuming that it will cost something like $30, and that by itself will recontextualize these creations offerings in a way which I suspect will make the pricing seem even more ridiculous. Ultimately, for as long as Bethesda continue to offer their own items in the creation shop and charge a lot of money, it's always going to feel to the player like they're withholding something from future DLCs or free updates in order to swindle the game's biggest fans. As a one-off or occasional thing, I see the value in a paid quest like Escape, but I'd much prefer that Escape had been bundled in with a larger DLC, because I would simply rather pay a bigger amount once for a bunch of new content than have to assemble my perfect game from parts in the creation shop at a much higher price. If nothing else, it really hurts the sense of discovery in a world like this when you know pretty much exactly what you're going to get from a quest and where you have to go to find it when it's bought on its own. I think that all of the Bethesda made stuff in Creations should have been offered as a free update or as part of a larger DLC expansion. I would have thought that a lot more players would be willing to pay for new stuff for the game if it was proven to be a good value as part of a larger package. Charging for individual quests as part of Creations though can easily alienate and divide the player base. I understand if they want to offer certain items exclusively through Creations to bring people into that ecosystem. and get them looking at all the other content. But the Bethesda stuff should be there as a free bonus. I seriously think Bethesda should give all of their creations away for free, refund anyone who has bought them already, and inject those credits back into the marketplace to support the modder-made stuff. They're getting a cut anyway, so it's not like they're not making money from that, but so long as Creations has this Bethesda presence, I think it is throwing off the balance of the marketplace and confusing the central purpose. I don't think many people love the idea of paying for mods, but if it encourages modders to create bigger, better, and more exciting content priced competitively, then people will be happy to support them. And Bethesda should be working with modders to make their stuff better, by allowing them to work with achievements, for example. The truth is, I don't think Bethesda knew exactly what they wanted Creations to be. If they wanted it to be a more limited, vetted, and quality-controlled selection of mostly paid content, like Creation Club used to be, then it needs to be optimized for that and offer a smaller, more curated selection. But if they want it to be about the modders and about incentivizing creativity within that community while allowing them to make a career out of modding, then let it be about the modders and keep the fantastic Bethesda stuff as more traditional DLC with accessible pricing for a mass audience, along with free updates to keep people engaged with the game. I'm sure that the economic realities of this situation are very complex, and Bethesda are probably doing what they're doing to keep Starfield profitable enough to justify supporting the game into the future. But I have to believe that they can adapt their approach to offer better value that attracts more players. I love Starfield and I love seeing new things added to the game. But the confused means by which Bethesda are delivering some of this content definitely makes it harder to enjoy. I think the addition of the Rev 8 is great above all because it's yet another example of Bethesda listening to community feedback and working to improve the core game. So when Bethesda are considering how they can improve the creation shop and their approach to monetization, I really hope they're listening to player feedback about what sort of value is on offer here. How do you feel about this new land vehicle in Starfield, and about the creation shop in general? Let me know in the comments, and please do like and subscribe if you'd like to hear me talk about more video game stuff. Otherwise, I'll see you next time around.